just wanted to be sure that the demand was there. We are calling this the deportation depot.
Florida migrant detention number 2.
Will have everything that is required under federal or state law.
As the first heads back to court.
It's a cruel thing what they're doing to families.
2 federal cases. One starts Monday. The lead lawyer is here. Lines in the sand.
We believe there's defects in the current map.
Florida enters the national fight to redistrict, redo the political map. Hear from the team who put fair districts in the state constitution. Rainbow road rage.
It's essentially blackmail.
If you don't remove these, we are going to withhold federal and state funds.
The state wants the color crosswalks out. Traffic safety or making pride less public.
Why would you want to dull a community that's so vibrant?
Fighting the fires.
This budget scares me.
Now fighting for funding and a threat to take the budget battle to court. The big news of the week and the newsmakers live this week in South Florida.
Good morning. Welcome. They said they would, and they did. Florida is about to have a second detention center for people held as undocumented. The governor unveiled the state's Baker Correctional Institution north of Gainesville that's been closed a few years as now deportation depot.
We're always planning on doing it. I just wanted to be sure that the demand was there. The demand is there.
They will have everything that is required under federal or state law for a detention facility.
There will be about 1,300 detainees. It'll be staffed in part by the National Guard. It needs air conditioning at the moment and some other work, but its estimated opening is in about 2 weeks. The cost estimated at $6 million to get up and running. The governor now also says a $600 million federal grant will eventually pay for both the Baker facility and the detention camp in the Everglades, Alligator Alcatraz. Now at the center of 2 lawsuits, both in Miami federal court, Judge Kathleen Williams, who put a temporary hold on more building there, is expected to rule later this week whether to make that restraining order permanent and whether the detention center was built in violation of federal environmental law. A second lawsuit in another Miami federal courtroom gets underway tomorrow. The ACLU and immigrant advocate associations and organizations allege that detainees are not getting legal access to their attorneys, faulting absence of a process and documentation about where they're taken. Eunice Cho is senior counsel with the ACLU National Prison Project and lead attorney on the case, joining us right now from Washington, D.C. Eunice, great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me on.
I want to just ask something right out of the lawsuit. You're challenging the government's attempt to prevent people who are being detained at Alligator Alcatraz from communicating with legal counsel. I'm reading this right out of the complaint. And preventing them from filing motions that could result possibly in their release. Do you think that this is an intentional prevention, or do you think this could be that they just aren't prepared at a place that is a kind of unprecedented detention center, didn't have the foresight, didn't have the preparation?
Well, what we know is that everything that is happening at Alligator Alcatraz is unprecedented and is not normal. The government has definitely been in a rush to build and detain people at this facility. And what we also know is that it is running roughshod over the most basic constitutional rights that people have when they're in government custody. And the other thing that we do know is that the harm that people are suffering as a result is deeply alarming. We are hearing stories of officers who are going around the facility pressuring people to sign voluntary removal orders without being able to speak to counsel. We heard a case of an intellectually disabled man being presented with a paper, and he was told that he should sign the paper to get a blanket, and it turned out to be a voluntary departure form, and he was deported very soon after.
Can I talk about those instances? You will know, we in the press and we in the public have a very hard time documenting and verifying a lot of things that we're hearing, for better or worse, because there is so little documentation coming out of there. Are the stories you're hearing firsthand? Do you hear this from attorneys? How are you hearing this information?
Well, we're hearing this from attorneys who have spoken to their clients and who have submitted sworn declarations under penalty of perjury to the court with respect to these stories.
And is anybody taking these to the, well, first of all, who is in charge there? I know that is something that even the courts are trying to determine. From what we've been able to understand, the facility and the operation is a state operation. The immigration process within is federal. Who do you take things to?
That's a very good question. I think attorneys and families and detainees themselves have been trying to figure that question out from the very start. And to be honest, it's been quite a moving target and has really changed over the scope of our case, partially in response to court orders to provide answers to these very basic questions. Right now, the government and the defendants are claiming that this is a state-run facility and that but that it's being operated under the auspices of what is called a 287G agreement, which is a federal statute that allows local and state officials to be deputized to act as federal immigration agents. And it is only after extensive training and requirements, other requirements that are fulfilled, that can actually happen. Whether or not that is actually the case and how close to the letter of the law this is being done is another question. But it has been very unclear from the very start in that there have been changing positions about who is in whose custody, who is actually paying for the facility. These are all murky questions that I think the public and the courts are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, and the jurisdictional issue, I mean, we in South Florida, we have other federal immigration detention centers. We have Crome Detention Center, there's Broward Transitional Center, and this is sort of a whole different animal, it seems like, from the way those two places are run. Is that your experience?
That's right. Well, you know, there are other detention facilities that exist in Florida, and the legal authority and the legal arrangements for those are far more typical that you see around the country. And this is really a unique situation that nobody really has seen before.
And in the court filings most recently, August 15th, it appears that for the first time, I mean, Alligator Alcatraz has been open since July 1st, or the first week of July. So a month and a half later, it looks like in the court filings that the cases are now jurisdictioned, for lack of a better word, at Crome Detention Center, which is probably the closest detention center there, at the edge of the Everglades instead of in the middle of it. But it seems like in a month and a half prior to this, where were the cases being taken, or where were the cases being processed, if not at Crome, as it appears they are now?
Well, I think you may be speaking about the fact that for many people who are held at the detention facility, they were attempting to file petitions for bond or release from custody. And of course, that is a fundamental due process right and a statutory right that everyone in detention has to be able to say, I should be released from custody. What has been happening, of course, is that immigration courts in Florida, when attorneys would go to try to file these bond petitions or actually had scheduled bond hearings, were told that the immigration courts did not have jurisdiction over those claims and either canceled the hearings or said that they just couldn't accept the petitions. Now, that is a huge problem because people who are in immigration detention, as I said, have a right to be able to request release from detention, and that was simply not happening.
I want to just talk about your clients for a moment in going through those processes. We initially were told, we being the public, were told the worst of the worst are here. These are people who have been through the system, who are deportable, who have removal papers. Are your clients, do your clients fit that description?
Well, I think what is very clear is that the people who are being held at Alligator Alcatraz are far from the picture of what the government has been trying to paint them as. There are people who are being held at Alligator Alcatraz that have no criminal history whatsoever. We have stories of people who have been at church and are being picked up as they walk out of the church by plainclothes officers and taken off to Alligator Alcatraz. These are people who have been living in the United States and Florida for decades, have had the same job for over 20 years, have children and families here in the United States, have no criminal history. There are other stories of people who are doing things no greater than driving home from work or fishing, being picked up by all manner of Florida state law enforcement officers. And again, Miami Herald, of course, has published a story looking at who people are actually being held. And they found that the vast majority of people who are being held in detention at Alligator Alcatraz either have no criminal history whatsoever, or that the criminal charges that they have faced are immigration related or relatively minor charges. And so,
and I ask you that because it seems like, I mean, there's a great number of people who are very supportive of the harsher immigration laws that are now in the state of Florida and across the country, and make a very big point of saying we don't want illegal people here. But I ask you that because all of these situations that you were just talking about, those people are legally here. They may not be citizens, they may be in the process, but at this moment in time, all of those situations are very legal situations for someone to be in the United States.
Well, I think what is actually really disturbing about some of the stories of people who have been detained at Alligator Alcatraz is the fact that, they have ongoing petitions to stay in the United States. They have applications because they are married to a U.S. citizen, for example. They're adjusting their status. They came in on a student visa and are in the process of applying for another visa. These are people who have been rounded up and taken to Alligator Alcatraz. And so I think it's very important to take a look at who exactly is being held at the facility, the stories of the people that are coming out, because it really isn't matching up what the government seems to be suggesting about who's being held at the facility.
So as you go into this hearing this week, what are you and the other plaintiffs looking to achieve?
Well, what we want is to make sure that everyone in government custody at Alligator Alcatraz does have the right to communicate with their attorneys, that if attorneys and clients want to be able to speak to each other, that they're able to do so in a confidential manner, that they're able to do so in a timely manner so that their case doesn't meet deadlines before they're actually able to meet. These are very basic things to ask of any detention facility, and it is not controversial that these are things that should be happening in any detention facility. We also want to make sure that people who are held at Alligator Alcatraz can have the ability to file and have their bond hearings heard as they are at the detention facility. It is not, it is a complete violation of due process for people not to be able to do so, and we want to make sure that they are given the ability to do that.
The nation is watching what will happen in a courtroom in Miami this week. Eunice Cho, I so appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
A war between the states now shaping up. Redraw congressional district lines, possibly sway the balance of power. Is Florida headed there? Someone on the front lines of Florida's district lines is with us next.
We have all these folks out here again who are just saying, we're done with just sitting by, right? And we're not going to obey in advance. We're not going to capitulate.
From this protest in Wilton Manors to gatherings like this all over the country this weekend, people are taking notice and taking a stand against attempts to redistrict the states, while Texas tries and California threatens to one-up them. Florida's leaders are now taking steps to decide whether to redistrict too, instead of waiting for the next census at the end of the decade.
We're in a situation where, we believe there's defects in the current map. We also believe that the districts are malapportioned because of the explosive growth that we've seen in the state of Florida.
Florida's Attorney General actually got that ball rolling in a letter to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He requested a mid-decade update to the 2020 census, suggesting the census was flawed, and so Florida could use new numbers to redistrict. This attention to census and redistricting comes with political calculation. An increase in population means Florida may add another district or more, and more members of Congress. How the district lines are drawn can, of course, determine how many Democrats or Republicans are in those districts and which way the district vote will go. Jessica Lowe Minor is president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. She helped work to pass Florida's Fair District constitutional amendment 15 years ago that requires lawmakers to draw even and fair district lines without gerrymandering them for political gain. Jessica, great to have you on the program.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Great, thanks. So, wow, 2015 now doesn't seem that long ago when when you participated in that constitutional amendment, and 63% of Floridians voted for what? Compact, square, continuous districts, which kind of makes sense. How does this new effort play with that in place in Florida?
Well, absolutely. In 2010, 63% of Floridians said that they did not want our state's districts drawn on a partisan basis. They did not want them to be drawn with the intent to favor or disfavor a political party or an incumbent. And here we are 15 years later in an unprecedented attempt to redistrict in the middle of a cycle without a new census to justify those numbers.
Can I just stop?
An unprecedented situation.
Can I just stop you there for 1 minute? I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to pick up on what you're saying. Why, inquiring minds want to know, why would a redistricting process not be continuous and compact districts? Well, it's kind of an assumption that redistricting will be unfair. Why is that an assumption?
Well, I don't think that should be an assumption. I think the assumption should be that our state legislature and our state elected officials will follow the state constitution, and that they will draw districts when possible along existing geographical or political lines, such as city limits, such as county lines, such as rivers, or existing geographical landmarks, right? So that is our expectation, that they will redistrict every 10 years, which is required, but that they'll do so in a way that is fair and seeking to serve the interests of voters and not seeking to serve themselves or their political party. That is what voters expect, and that's what we want to see.
Is it fair to want to have a redistricting effort mid-decade if Florida's population numbers do change? Either way, I mean, I know the population of Florida is increasing bit by bit, but if there was a decrease, hypothetically, would it play mid-decade in a proper, lawful way to address those numbers and possibly increase or decrease districts and congressional seats?
Well, so the reapportionment that you're talking about is what allocates how many congressional districts each state will have. And so that really is based on the national census, which has only been done every 10 years. We've actually never in our country's history had a mid-cycle census. And so, that would require a huge national effort to have an entirely new census created. It takes years to plan and organize a successful census. And most experts believe that it's not possible to do a new census and have it be accurate and comprehensive in, kind of on the fly in this manner. And so if we do not have a new and complete census done, then there are no new numbers upon which to base a reapportionment. And so there's no way for Florida to get new seats if there is not a new census done. And so if we are not getting new seats and we're not having to change the maps, then there's no reason to change our current maps other than perhaps a partisan intent to gerrymander in favor of a specific party. And so from our perspective at the League of Women Voters, and of course, most Floridians across the state want to see our state legislature spending time on the economic issues that are impacting all of us, the rising healthcare costs, the rising cost of homeowners insurance in our state, housing affordability, education, the fact that it costs so much money to go buy food at the grocery store. Those are the things that our legislature and our governor need to be focusing on, not trying to rig the system to benefit themselves.
All right. Well, in fairness to them, because they're not here to defend themselves, I know that they are working on that because I speak to some of the lawmakers in South Florida every day who are addressing just those things also. So let me take you back 3 years ago. 15 years ago, we talked about. Now, 3 years ago, there was redistricting. The governor, DeSantis, literally pushed through maps that changed some of the lines, one of them being a North Florida district that was really long, splitting it in two. And the significance of that, it was seen as a district that allowed the black majority in that district to elect whom they wanted to elect. That's now split. The Supreme Court, Florida Supreme Court, opined that that was fine eventually. I'm kind of short-circuiting everything. So now there is a letter from the House Speaker sort of getting this ball rolling, asking for a commission for redistricting, and references that Florida Supreme Court opinion as if that sort of paves the way for a redistricting now. Is that how you see it?
No, that's not how we see it. We believe that the court upheld the current district map, which, as you say, was developed by the governor and ultimately approved by the legislature. And so the court held that the current map is constitutional, but they did not say that a new map needed to be done. Had they said that, the court themselves may have put forward a map or may have approved a different map. But the court held that the current map, which was developed, is consistent with the state constitution and with federal standards. And so there is no reason from our perspective to redo that map at this time, certainly not without new census numbers justifying the effort.
Take me through that a little bit deeper, because I'm not sure I'm very clear. It kind of was a split opinion, and it held that the maps did pass muster. But then you still have the question, is this map fair to Florida's African-American community? That question still exists.
Well, ultimately, we don't love the current map. We were part of the plaintiffs who were challenging the map as it had been developed several years ago and ultimately was approved. So we support the standard in our state constitution that says that districts shall not be drawn in order to essentially diminish the representation of a minority community. And so where you have the opportunity for minority communities to elect candidates of their choice, the state constitutional language does encourage the legislature to protect those districts. In this case, we, the League of Women Voters, did not feel like the legislature had done everything it could to effectively protect minority representation. However, the state Supreme Court ultimately upheld the current map as constitutional. However, the state Supreme Court did not argue that the state needed to redraw the map in any way. They upheld the current map.
Will the League of Women Voters of Florida fight any kind of effort to redistrict Florida this time?
Absolutely. I mean, we think that it's very clear that this is a power grab, that this is something that our state constitution expressly prohibits. Again, we cannot in Florida have districts that are drawn with the explicit intent to favor or disfavor a political party or an incumbent. And from our perspective, there is no reason to do a mid-cycle redistricting unless there is a partisan intent.
Florida about to enter the national fray. Jessica, great to have you on the program, and I hope you will keep in touch with us as this progresses.
Thank you so much for covering this. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks. Next, road rage over the rainbow. South Florida cities defying state orders to remove those prides from the crosswalks. That's next. Key West Commissioner Sam Kaufman joins me right here at the table for that. Stay tuned. Key West commissioners officially honoring the city's rainbow crosswalks and historic so-called gayborhood as a treasured cultural district. A bit of a problem, though, maybe now in a new state transportation bill that outlaws street art. The law cites safety and uniformity in road signage, though rainbow crosswalks honor pride in a state that regularly targets what leaders call ideology. Friday, Delray Beach received a letter from FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, giving the city until September 3rd to remove its rainbow mural crosswalk, or the state will do it for them and Delray Beach will pay. And back in Key West, the commission is asking the city attorney for legal options to preserve the rainbow crosswalks on Duval Street. Sam Kaufman is a city commissioner who sponsored both the proclamation and the resolution on the city's rainbow roads right here at the table. Driving, 4 hours just to be with us. I so appreciate that.
Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So what I didn't know until kind of delving into this is that Key West has the first rainbow crosswalks in the state of Florida, although big cities around the world have had them for a while. And you did not get a letter from the state yet.
Not a specific letter about our crosswalks, no.
So that the proclamation and looking into legal issues is kind of a unilateral, offensive somehow?
Well, there was a letter that the FDOT secretary sent in general to cities back on June 30th, and this was a response basically to that to, have our community come together and really make a statement that our crosswalks are a big important symbol of what our community is all about, and we welcome millions of visitors a year, and it's a place of belonging and how people feel safe and unified. So we really felt like it was important.
So, the essential question for this whole discussion is this transportation safety, or is this sort of a grenade lobbed in what people call the culture wars in Florida? Which is it to you?
Right. So our law enforcement officials tell us that there has not been a single incident, traffic accident, or any incident involving the crosswalks. And you know that our crosswalks have been there for many years. So it seems to me that it is content-based. It is based upon what the symbol is on the ground as opposed to the actual safety issues.
So let me just push back on that a little bit, because Key West is, respectfully this big, right? And there are crosswalks in very big cities in Florida and around the world. There are signs from the U.S. transportation safety people who years ago, 10 years ago, have said that street markings have to comply with state and federal rules, or else they're a distraction and a bit of confusion. So although in Key West, where the streets are relatively small, it's a very walkable city, that may not apply in other big urban centers. And does everything have to be equal in the law when it comes to roads?
Look, if you walk on our street, on Duval Street, the corner of Duval Street and Petronia, it's heavily trafficked by pedestrians, and it's tourists and locals, and it doesn't seem to be a hindrance to any traffic. So there's no evidence of that. And so I don't know why we would need to change the crosswalks for traffic safety. And by the way, our legal counsel tells us that our crosswalks are within the parameters of FDOT guidelines. And so we're in compliance. And I don't know about the other cities in Florida. I understand there's 11 or 12 other cities, but our crosswalks are within the FDOT design manual regulations. And so, our position is that they should remain.
Do you know the details of that? Because the new law, which outlaws street art, clearly that is street art, whatever the intention is. Very clearly, a rainbow crosswalk or any other crosswalk of any other color in the new law does not seem to comply. I'm interested to hear what the legal opinion, how is that in compliance?
Well, our legal counsel tells us that the colors are specified by the FDOT manual, design manual, that our colors were placed in the crosswalks by a contractor that was familiar with FDOT design manual guidelines, that they were specific, the specifications that FDOT has, and we're in good shape. That's what our legal counsel tells us. So our commission voted unanimously to pursue that line and to continue all administrative and legal remedies to maintain the crosswalks.
All right, let's blow this up a little bit to our larger South Florida audience. So we have Boynton Beach, St. Pete, Fort Lauderdale, Delray Beach, West Palm Beach. All of these places have rainbow crosswalks. Miami Beach has one. Boynton Beach painted over its last month, rather than lose state funding, because that is the consequence. This is a picture, this is a video of what we're looking at there. There are other cities like Key West that are looking for legal counsel in order to, I don't want to say fight it, because that's not what you said, that's my word, but sort of preserve. And so if state funding is the consequence, Is this important enough and valuable enough to forego state funding? How much state funding does Key West get?
Well, I don't think we have to go there yet at this point. The Florida statute that is cited by the FDOT secretary does state explicitly that funding can be withheld if there is not compliance.
What does that look like in Key West?
Well, we don't know. We haven't gone there yet because in our stage we believe that we're in compliance, and we have not, as a city, received a specific letter to our location from the Florida Department of Transportation.
Do you think a public appearance on a television program might spur that letter tomorrow?
It might, but I think your viewers should know that our city works very well with FDOT. We have many road projects, as many, I'm sure the other cities do as well.
Yes.
And this is just one particular issue we may disagree about. But also, I read the letter to Delray Beach, and it said that they have a right to a hearing, and that these issues really should be brought to an administrative judge or to a court of law to make that determination if there is compliance or not. And they should look at all their administrative and legal remedies.
Can I switch subjects a little? I'm going rogue. I know you're not
Sure.
prepared for this, and
Sure.
neither is any of my team, but we
Sure.
are reporting on the flooding projects and the situation all throughout the Keys. You're a commissioner in Key West, in the northern Keys and Key Largo. There are neighborhoods that are underwater that are going to be asked to participate in any kind of road building, road raising. What are the issues in Key West? Where do you stand with flooding? We're in storm season now, and that's a very big deal.
We have quite a bit of flooding, but we have a robust stormwater system, and our stormwater system works very well. And
pumping
is
there.
Pumping.
Yeah.
So as it does flood, our neighborhoods are really assisted by these really robust pumping systems. And it does make a big difference. So our efforts really are to identify the neighborhoods that are in need for additional pumping stations and improvements of the existing pumping stations.
Is there any long-term or short-term projects to raise any of the roads like some of the other areas in the Keys are doing, a hugely expensive but probably property-saving endeavor?
It is extremely expensive to raise roads. To some extent, that might happen, but on a very limited basis on our island. Key West is a little bit different, and your viewers, those who travel to Key West, know it's so important to travel safely along US 1 to get to Key West. So I think our interest is to make sure that FDOT, and we work very well with FDOT, we want them to complete those projects to make sure that it is safe to pass all the way down to Key West.
So bringing this conversation full circle, do you think this rainbow crosswalk issue might in some way take Key West's issue and involve the rest of the Keys where FDOT is concerned?
Well, I think this is a specific issue with regard to the crosswalks. Again, our relationship with FDOT is good, and we will continue to work with FDOT, and hopefully we can work this issue out as well. But I could tell you that our community stands united to keep the crosswalks.
Any chance of secession from the state of Florida again?
Well, Key Westers are fiercely independent, so I wouldn't go that far, but we will be unified on this issue.
One of the reasons we love them. Sam Kaufman, great to have you at the table. Thank you for the travel. We'll reciprocate.
Thank you for having me.
All right, up next, Miami-Dade's firefighters are fighting for more money than the budget plan is giving, and that ask comes with a threat. The head of the Firefighters Union joins us for that conversation right after the break. Public safety always gets a big chunk of the county budget, and as Miami-Dade's plan tries to fill a $403 million hole, firefighters are feeling a bit of a burn. Now the union is threatening to sue. William McAllister is the president of Metro-Dade Firefighters Local 1403, right here to talk about that. Metro-Dade, you haven't changed to Miami-Dade Local, huh?
No, it's important to note that we represent not just the firefighters, but also the dispatchers, and we work well together with all the fire departments in Dade County and Monroe.
You know, that's actually a good point, because as we'll talk about public safety, and we've talked to the sheriff who was here, we've talked to the mayor who was here, public safety is much more than one department doing one thing. It's a very complicated thing in the county. But very specifically to the firefighters, who are traditionally very important and a priority in every budget in every county. Very specifically, in this very tough budget year, what's in the news right now are those helicopters. And that, I think, is, and I want to start there because that's a very big change for this department, that the 4 air rescue choppers now will apparently, at this moment, not be reimbursed to the department to the tune of what, $30 million?
28 to 30, it depends, yes.
And so talk about that a little bit, because that is a big chunk of money, but certainly a small part of your budget.
Absolutely. So in 1985, the Air Rescue Program was established, and that program was established with the understanding that it would be a regional asset. And it's something that there are 6 fire departments in Dade County currently, and that one helicopter service provided by 2 bases at Opelika and Tamiami provides services to all 6 fire departments, MDFR, and the 5 municipal fire departments, as well as working with state and federal partners on regional concerns.
And let me just, for people who are not deep in the weeds with all of this stuff, there are the 5, I thought there were 6 cities that that have their own departments that are not part of Miami-Dade Fire Department. Hialeah, Coral Gables, Miami Beach, help me.
City of Miami, Key Biscayne.
And Key Biscayne, okay. Yeah. So 5.
Yeah.
And yet those choppers service those that have their own departments and are not part of the county budget. That was kind of the explanation.
Absolutely.
Am I there? Okay.
Yeah.
So do these cities pay into, in any way, the pot to pay for that service?
I think you got right to the heart of the matter here.
Oh, good, because that's kind of what we want to do here.
In 1980, there was questions of what services would be paid for by whom. And the will of the voters was to establish an independent fire rescue taxing district that would pay for the green trucks in your neighborhood firehouses. If you live in one of the cities that have their own fire department, those taxpayers don't pay into the fire rescue taxing district. They pay their municipal taxes,
Sure.
and their fire department is funded out of that. The important point of difference is the county air rescue helicopters, because the extraordinary costs of operating these life-saving resources can only be paid for by the county. So it has been since inception.
Why? Why
because
is that?
the operating cost of these helicopters is equivalent to the entire operating budget for Coral Gables Fire Department. There's simply just no way for smaller municipalities to provide this critical resource by air.
Is there a thought, or have there ever been any kind of discussions about having a pay per use for the other cities who use it?
There was a discussion back at the inception of the program for fee for service or things of that nature. Yeah. But because of our helicopters' operating stance, it's impossible to charge for it. Our helicopters don't just provide air ambulance service. They keep the corridor down into the Keys open. We work with Florida Forestry to put out wildfires. We do search and rescue missions in the Everglades. So if somebody's riding, using a kayak, and they end up being swept out into Whitewater Bay, we launch a search and rescue mission to find them. And we also work out in the open water in Biscayne Bay, and we also to look for people lost at sea, kayakers, and things of that nature.
So that actually goes to what might be something that solves this budget issue, is to have the people who benefit from this use somehow pay into this fund.
I certainly think that there are opportunities to innovate, but currently the ordinance that was passed—
That's not on the table yet, is what you're saying.
Well, this is codified in law. So there was an ordinance passed by the will of the voters in 1980, 45 years ago, that established the district and clearly said those paying into the district, those funds exclusively will pay for the fire rescue service provided by the green trucks. And everything else that is of a countywide nature will be paid by the county through countywide funds.
So the budget, let's put up that dollar bill if we can. This is the Miami-Dade's budget. Anybody could take a look at this page in the Miami-Dade budget rundown online. And if you look at the bulk of the dollar, the cents on the dollar, all the way on the left, public safety is 31 cents of every dollar in the budget. And that public safety does not include the sheriff's department. And we talked all about that with Sheriff Rosie Cordero-Stutz last week, but this public safety portion does include the fire department.
It does.
And corrections and the medical examiner and a couple of other things. This is the portion of the budget that actually gets cut the least in this very tough year. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, you've threatened a lawsuit. I mean, you mean business. In this kind of contentiousness now that this has set up, how would you approach this budget and fill a $400 million plus hole in the budget.
Yeah, I think it's important to speak to that red part of the dollar bill.
Yeah.
The fire department is one of many departments that fall underneath of that. It's worth less than 1/13 of the total county budget. So the sum total of that is the medical examiner, corrections, and a lot of the other things that fall under that. So I understand the sheriff is outside of it, but clearly we are a small portion of that. And it's just very important to return to the fact that this is established by an ordinance that says that there is an exclusive millage paid for fire rescue service that the community established 45 years ago because they never wanted fire rescue services to be deemed discretionary. They wanted to make sure that the taxes they were paid to provide for engines and rescues to save lives would always be there. The budget would not run into a shortfall, and it would, most importantly, not be used to rescue mayors when their budgets and other areas of county government experience a shortfall like we're seeing now.
Yeah, Miami-Dade historically, and not against this administration certainly, but historically have used things like the transportation penny to backstop things in the general fund. I mean, this isn't the first time. So my question is, I mean, I am very mindful that you are here on our program making a case for a lawsuit you may well bring, and I appreciate that. But how, in a larger sense, as a firefighter in Miami-Dade County, who works hard for and loves the county and provides such a public service, think with me holistically on what then? How does the fire department participate in such a cost-cutting measure to fill a very difficult budget year?
It's important to not pull the fire department into this discussion as it relates to the shortfall.
You don't want to be part of the cuts at all?
Because we administer the Fire Rescue Taxing District independently of the county funds, and our problem is not a shortage of dollars, it's a shortage of service. Right now, according to the department's own documents, we need 36 new units to provide service. Our published response time to life-threatening calls within the urban boundary and the county's CAFR, the annual financial report, was 9.15 minutes. That is too long to wait for help, and it makes it particularly dangerous for firefighters because we're responding to emergencies that are evolving. The longer the time runs before we can put water on fire, before we can defibrillate somebody in cardiac arrest, the more likely it is that either the community suffers or our firefighters are in danger, as we saw in Medley.
And important to note that firefighting includes paramedics, medical
Absolutely.
calls.
And divers.
And divers.
Yeah.
So in this budget is an addition of 13 heavy fleet vehicles and 15 light fleet vehicles, which goes to what you were just talking about. There is, if I'm reading that budget right, there is an addition of 28 vehicles to the department. That's kind of what you were just speaking about?
So because of, and this where it gets a little nerdy, but when you get into the...
That's what we're about.
Yeah,
we are nerdy here.
When you get into the accreditations and certifications this department holds up as promises to the community, we have a fleet that is in need of additional units to continue ensuring we have fire trucks and rescue trucks 24/7, 365 in service.
So are those additions appropriate?
These are necessary because of the wear and tear on vehicles. We're still, in some sense, recovering from the Great Recession. We bottomed out as a department in 2012 when taxes were reduced, and we worked our way through that. And now we're in an opportunity now to fix our service shortfalls with the money that the taxpayers have apportioned to us through their vote.
So, William McAllister, it is great to have you at the table. I know this is a step in the process, and I know this is part of the run-up to what is going to be a pretty contentious debate over the budget, and we're a couple of weeks away from that vote, September 4th. And,
the first ordinance hearing, yes.
Yeah, and so we'll absolutely be watching. I appreciate you coming in with your insights.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, stay with us. We will be right back. That is our program for today. Links to all the interviews are online at local10.com, or you can just scan that QR code and it takes you right there. We love to hear from you. Send us an email at twisf@wplg.com, and you can always find me on social media at Glenna WPLG. And coming up tonight on World News Weekend, the latest as President Trump prepares to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tomorrow in Washington, D.C. Former Vice President Mike Pence speaking out about President Trump's federal takeover of Washington, D.C. Hear what he has to say. And 105 years ago, the 19th Amendment was ratified, allowing women the right to vote. So why does one group of people want to debate it all over again? Join us tonight for our World News Weekend right here, 6:30 on local10.com. And of course, we thank you so much for spending this hour with us, learning with us. Have a beautiful day. Remember, keep in touch.